First post ever. Hope you enjoy. I would love if any of you have an explanation for this story. This happened to me when I was 17, around the time when most of my friends were just getting their driver's license. We all had that rush for cars back then, so it was quite common for us to skip school and go for a ride out of town. The city where I live is surrounded by forests and 2 mountains, so we basically had a lot of places to go and chill. One day my friend was very excited to show us a place that he found out about online, for which people said was quite odd. We looked it up and apparently it had a reputation for being a paranormal site. Being the typical group of teens, we collectively agreed to check it out as soon as possible, including me, who more or less believes in spiritual stuff. Going up the mountain, we were listening to the radio until we lost the station to static, which for obvious reasons is what the radio does when you go deep into the woods. This entire experience is happening during a summer night, so we were feeling pretty careless and as excited as a person can be. Having no music to listen to, we started talking and discussing our expectations for this place, with most of us having no expectations at all. Our conversation was suddenly interrupted by the loud static coming from the radio that we turned off just a few minutes ago. We were all a bit startled, but still nothing out of the ordinary. It happened again a few minutes later. We all looked at the radio, it was still off. We quickly dismissed this as something that radios do for some reason, and again didn't pay much attention. The third time that it happened, the driver hit the brakes and stopped the car. He turned to us and yelled, "What the hell? Did you hear that? What was that?" Claiming that he heard a voice this time. None of us heard anything except static. The driver said that he has had enough and switched the engine off, so there is no possible way for anything, including the radio, to be working. We sat like that for a while in pitch black, for there were no city lights around us, and the forest had covered all other light sources like stars. You couldn't distinguish a night sky. That's how dark it was. The light indicating the radio turned on, and soon after the static came. I could tell we were all feeling a bit anxious by then. Through the static came a female voice singing, and it was very silent. For a second it got louder, then fell back to silent again, and then vanished. But even weirder, the static vanished too. Once we switched the car back on and turned the headlights on too, we observed what seemed to be smudges of fingers all across the windshield. We didn't turn the car around immediately, but I could tell that we all just wanted to leave. We stopped further up on a hill, took some pictures of the Milky Way, and went home afterward. Ever since, we speculate about what the hell happened to the radio and windshield that night. My friends went 2 more times without me to the same place, recording the same, including feeling a small push once the car was off. What do you think? I believe there are many logical explanations, but considering the fact that I'm somewhat a person who believes in such stuff and had an adrenaline rush that night, it's hard for me to grasp something rational. Years ago, when I was still a teenager, my friend Justin and I would often go longboarding at night, as my friends and I were quite the night owls. We loved the freedom of almost never seeing another soul on the roads or the paths we frequented. Even when using main roads, it would be very rare to see a car out so late in such a rural area, and you could see and hear them coming from very far away due to their headlights and the noise of the vehicle disrupting the peaceful silence of the night. We were really into it at the time and would often ride our boards for miles and miles, sometimes not arriving home until the sun was up. One particular night, we decided to ride a few miles away from our usual back roads to take one of our favorite hidden routes. It began with a narrow, paved path that was the only piece of land separating 2 sides of a long lake. It would often sink under due to rain, and we wanted to seize the opportunity to use it before it rained and went underwater again. It was roughly 2 miles long and was extremely relaxing to ride through due to the scenery. After making it to the end of the lake, we decided to continue moving and turn into a very close path that leads directly into a densely wooded wilderness preservation. As we came up to the first hill, we looked down at the bottom into the blackness. We both noticed what appeared to be a tiny, moving ball of dim light down there. It moved so strangely, and it was extremely difficult to make out what it was. Rather than shine our flashlight down, we curiously watched it for a few moments, whispering to each other about what it could possibly be. All at once, that small light turned into multiple blinding lights and extremely loud revving sounds, overwhelming our senses that had become accustomed to the dark and silence. Acting purely on fear, we instantly turned around and ran as fast as we could, hearing yelling and revving gaining behind us. By sheer luck, we managed to run off path into a very dark, very overgrown hole in the side of a hill overlooking where we had just come from. We decided to hide in the natural dugout of this hill, hoping the plants and darkness would be enough to protect us from whatever was happening out there. We watched our pursuers ride up to where we had originally been standing. There were 4 men, 2 on 4-wheelers, and 2 on full-sized motorcycles. They were yelling at each other about something, but we couldn't make out what they were saying due to the distance we had covered. We felt safe enough to whisper very softly to each other and speculated who these people could be. Our first thought was they might be park rangers of some kind, although we had never seen one here in the many times we had been through, and honestly, we doubted that this county had the budget or even the desire to have anyone patrol the deep woods at night. Besides that, these men were on vehicles entirely inappropriate for the paved bike trails, and they were very angry about something. They called out to us for a while, yelling things like, "We know you're out there, and we can see you, come on out." We stayed silent, and decided to call their bluff instead of running. Eventually, we clearly heard one of the men yell, "Find them now," and smash a bottle that had erased any hope we had that these were just park rangers. We watched them split up, each of them going a different way down the series of paths on their vehicles, including the path we came from. It took us what felt like ages to even move. We were frozen in terror inside that dugout, watching the lights from the vehicles travel through the woods and paths, one of them already coming full circle and passing the point he started from. I thought about calling for help, but I was too afraid to open my phone in fear that even the smallest amount of light would give away our location. After waiting for the lights of the vehicles to reach their farthest distance yet, we finally summoned the nerve to get up and try to run somewhere far enough from these people to safely make a call. We ran as hard and fast as we could through the woods. Since their headlights gave away their location on these paths, we would hide again whenever we felt they were getting too close. Our available hiding spots were getting progressively worse as the woods became less dense, and the fear I felt waiting for one of them to drive past us while basically only being covered in leaves and plants may still be unmatched to this day. Finally, we emerged from the woods onto the intersection of 2 main roads, far from where we started. We ducked down into the ditch to call for help. When I opened my phone, I noticed I had recent missed calls from one of our other friends, Connor, who we were supposed to meet up with after our long board excursion. I called him and frantically asked where he was. Luck was with us again. He hadn't given up on our plans despite us ignoring him, and was only a few miles away, already heading in our direction. I gave him the names of the 2 streets we were near the corner of, and explained that we needed to be picked up right away. He agreed to speed over to us while Justin and I waited in hiding. Thankfully, Connor arrived before any of those men did. We bolted into the back seats of his car, yelling for him to get out of there, and he took off. Relief doesn't begin to describe what I felt being safely driven home after everything I had just experienced. After explaining everything that happened to Connor, we ended up just moving on with our night and decided not to call the police. We figured they would be gone by the time any officer made it out there, and that we would only be putting ourselves at risk by admitting to breaking the law by taking those paths so late at night. I still have no idea what happened or who those people were. I've been told all kinds of theories from friends and family that have heard this story. Some think we walked right up to a huge drug deal. Justin and I later admitted to each other that when the revving started and we couldn't see, our minds both went straight to chainsaw-wielding horror movie serial killer, so I suppose it could have been much worse. Frustratingly enough, whatever those men thought we saw that made them want to catch us so badly, we never actually saw. We'll never really know, I suppose. it was suggested I share this story here, so here I go. My now ex-husband was transferred to a major US city when we were in our late 20s. His job had him monitoring individuals in and around the major city. During his surveillance, he came across a quaint town that is known for its charm, a great shopping district, and has even been used in a movie or two. He arranged to drive me out to this town for a festival so we could also explore the area to decide if this might be where we'd buy a house and start a family. The main street still has that early 20th century charm of a movie theater, business fronts in full use, and a hotel that dates back to the 1800s. We were walking along the main street when I came across a building with mullioned window panes, very large. We had stopped walking due to the high traffic volume for the festival, so I looked in. Round tables filled the room and there were men, mostly older, some senior, at the tables. It appeared to be a jovial atmosphere, and there was cigarette smoke before it was illegal nearly everywhere. And beverages. I said to my partner, "Oh, it looks like a senior home." He didn't look in, as foot traffic was moving again and we moved on to something else. Years later, we did move to that town and we have 3 kids. We visited the town history center so one of the children could get some research down for a school project. While they were working with one of the historians, I asked the other one about the hotel. He gave me a brief rundown, mentioning when the hotel closed, businesses that tried to make it in that spot, but he never mentioned it had been a senior center. So I asked him, so how long was it a senior center? He got this look on his face and looked over at his co-worker, who was returning the stare. They asked me to tell them what I saw and what year it happened, which I did. He chuckled, went over to the cabinet, and pulled out the hotel's file. While telling me the hotel had never been a senior center, that the portion of the building I had observed had long been empty, he then showed me some images of the hotel. And the portion I had observed had once been used to feed guests and people off the street. He wrote down my story, and there were many others listed there. The History Center does ghost walks every October, so I assume they kept notes for these events. Is it a glitch in the Matrix? I don't know. I have heard of energy imprints, and wondered if this was what I observed. Either way, along with some of the gangster stories from around town, bodies washing up at Girl Scout camps down the river from a famous gangster's hideaway, this story is always fun to share with out-of-town guests after having dinner and walking in that downtown area. A few years ago, I was working at a pizza chain in my hometown. As a driver, I was 27, but made darn good money delivering. I had worked at a few other places, both local and chain, in the years before, and still work as a dasher on occasion even after this happened. Now I choose to deliver in much safer areas for this reason. I got luckier than I could ever imagine. One night I was working and had a double, 2 deliveries to take. Both were cash orders. I had $12 left in my bank, what drivers are given to use as change for cash orders, so you don't have a ton of cash on you at all times. The first order went smoothly. The guy gave me $50 for a $35 order, so I was excited about the nice tip. I drove to the second delivery. It was at an apartment complex with multiple buildings. I had delivered there before. The sun was about to set, but it was still very light out. The chain I worked at had us drive company cars with the logo on it. All white sedans. This is important. I grab the order and go to the door to the apartment building. A young guy comes out, and a much bigger older guy was outside smoking a cigarette. The big guy went inside as the smaller guy came out. He looked around nervously and asked how much he owed me. The way he was looking around just made me very nervous. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I told him the amount, and he said that wasn't what he was told on the phone. Something was very wrong. I felt someone else walk out behind me from the door as the first young guy looked around down the parking lot, craning his neck as if he was looking for someone. I told him the amount again and broke down the order for him, trying to keep calm. Then the first guy held a gun to my right temple. I also felt a poke on my spine. 2 gunmen. I couldn't speak. Words wouldn't form no matter how hard I tried. Give me your money and keys. Now, the first guy growled and I fumbled immediately for the keys. I gave him my bank but hadn't realized the 50 was mixed in. I gave him the keys, trying my best to remain calm. Another guy came up from my left. He had poofy hair and was around the same age as the first kid, the one behind me I hadn't seen yet. The big hair kid grabbed the pizza bag and ran off and hid. The first kid searched the company car. Luckily, I had left my wallet in my personal car. I saw him grab my cell phone. That's when the panic began to set in. I had pictures on that phone that I hadn't backed up of my then 5-year-old son, who absolutely is my world. Please, please don't take that. I have pictures of my son who died on there. It's all I have of him, please. I lied. My son is very much alive. The kid behind me spoke softly. Trust me, just listen to him. You'll get it back undamaged. I don't want to be here either. I could tell he'd been crying by how his voice sounded. A car began pulling in, and the 3 boys took off to the other end of the complex in a full sprint before the one behind me ran. He dropped the gun in front of me. Standard issue 9mm silver and black, safety off. Looked completely real to me. He picked it back up and ran with the others. The car that pulled in saw me. It was a woman and her kid. Panic set in as I realized they could easily come back and do way worse to me as the sky started to get dark. I collapsed. They had taken my company car keys, $72, the pizza, and my phone. The woman ran up to me and asked if I was alright. She took me into her apartment in the next building over and locked the door. I was shaking so hard I couldn't even hold her phone to talk to the police as she set down her kid. Her boyfriend, I assume, helped me call. I spoke to the operator and told her everything. I'm colorblind and these guys were obviously wearing all black and white clothes, thank God. I had a full description of 2 of them. The poor woman who helped me was going to be late for work, but she still stayed until I was off the phone and cops had shown up. Man, she was harsh and blunt with the operator, but I will never forget this woman's utter kindness to me and her boyfriends. Cops showed up and contacted my store, and my manager brought out the spare keys for me to drive the car back to the store. After dealing with the cops, I drove back and was greeted by crying and beyond worried coworkers. All of them were terrified that I was hurt. It meant a lot to me how much they cared, but I told them I was fine. I filed the proper paperwork, and the 72 was written off as a loss to the store. Thank God, because I had worked other stores that make you pay back the money out of pocket if you get robbed to prevent drivers from stealing. I was told by the owner to take the rest of the night off and take care of myself. He gave me a hug. He was to this day one of the best bosses I ever had. What I didn't know was I was in for a very long night. I called my best friend before I left the store from the store phone and asked where he was. We usually meet up for drinks after work. He was around the corner at a bar, so I met up with him. His dad was a District 4 cop in my city at the time, the same district that this happened in. He told me his dad had given him a heads up and he had 2 shots waiting for me to calm my nerves. After the 2 shots, we began playing pool when his dad called his phone and asked if I was with him yet. He said yeah, and handed me the phone. His dad asked if I could come to the station. I was honest and told him I'd had 2 shots. So he sent out a squad car to get me since it wasn't that far away. We get to the station. They had suspects in custody. I was needed to ID them. 3 boys and a driver. They had been caught less than 20 minutes after the robbery, speeding. The bolo had already gone out, and they matched the description. They had used the money to buy weed and gas, and had taken off. They had at least 15 stolen phones on them. The order had been placed on a stolen phone. My phone was in the mix in the box. The police told me to grab my phone only, and I did. They asked me to unlock it. It had fingerprint verification, so that was easy. 9 out of the 10 tries to unlock it had already been used before my phone would have completely reset. It unlocked. I told the police every detail yet again. Although my parental instincts kicked in, I told them the guy behind me quite obviously was bullied into this and to show mercy. He was the one with the white shirt. The police went wide-eyed and told me he was the one talking. The other 3 denied involvement. That's when I found out about the 4th guy, the driver. We found out later he was completely unaware of the robbery and was just picking up his friends. He was never charged. The boy who was behind me and the one who grabbed the pizza were 15 and 16 and got 6 months of house arrest. The only reason the one behind me got off easy despite having the gun to my back was because I asked them to go easy on him, that he was a good kid who didn't want to be there. And he was the only one confessing. Makes sense since he had even said the other guy wouldn't have the phone for long. He was planning on going to the cops had they not been caught. But the other guy, the first kid who put the gun to my temple, it was his 18th birthday. He got the book thrown at him. In the courtroom, he made fun of me and was laughing at me. Seeing him made me panic. The judge scolded him for his behavior, and he just grinned and glared at me with a Joker-like grin. All I could see was pure evil. This kid will commit more crimes. I have no doubt he will eventually end someone's life. You can see how cold he is just by looking in his eyes. He's evil incarnate. I grew up in a town full of murders and abusers. I had never seen this kind of evil in my life, and I never want to see it again. I asked to have my name stricken from the records and asked to remain anonymous in case he ever got out. I'm so glad I did, because today I got a letter from the state. He's being released in February. The court only had my old address, and my mom didn't think the letter was important. I missed the deadline to protest his release for probation. The plea deal was 8 years. It's only been 4. He's getting out early due to overcrowding. Not good behavior, overcrowding. This coming February, and I'm ready if he finds me. My wife, my parents, everyone I know knows his face and name. If he tries anything, we are all ready. But for his sake, let's not meet. To the woman and her family who helped me, I was a woman then. I am trans. If you see this, please know my undying gratitude for you all. It was inconvenient for you, and yet you still were late to work to help me, and I cannot thank you enough. I bought Christmas presents for your daughter, but when I went to the landlord there to find you had moved. I didn't want to be a creep and stalk your new place, but I'm glad you got out of that bad neighborhood, and I hope your beautiful baby girl is doing well too. I would gladly meet you again to give you the proper thanks you deserve. From the Domino's driver in Southwest Ohio.